Incredible.
Y'all ready?
Fish stripes fly for the final time on a Monday evening and the second to last time in the regular season. I'm Ethan Badowski, joined by the gang, Eli Sussman, Kevin Barral, Isaac Azoot, and Alex Carver. Alex, happy birthday. Welcome to the birthday stream. How is you enjoying your day so far?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm at the age where it sucks getting older, but I guess I'm still here, so that's good. Made it another year, right? So
there you go.
The Marlins may be on their way to shortening my tenure here with what we put up with, but it is what it is. But yeah, no, it's good to be here. Thanks for the birthday wishes, appreciate it, and Let's go.
Oh
yeah,
wait,
I think
Alex, Ethan, we have something special
great.
right here for you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alex. Happy birthday to you.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Amazing. Wonderful rendition of Happy
I just
birthday.
recorded that this morning. Yes.
Yeah, good tell.
Absolutely
How's your time?
Perfect. Absolutely. All right, so on Alex's birthday, we're here previewing the Marlins. One final time, they'll face the New York Mets in a 4-game series. It's their final road trip of the year, and of course, it's 4 games because the Marlins just decided to have another doubleheader with the New York Mets. And actually, I totally forgot, they don't play today. Today is the off day. The Marlins play tomorrow, and they've got 2 games tomorrow. They've got an empty spot in the rotation tomorrow. And then they've got who's pitching in the first game. I think it's going to be Trevor Rogers. Am I wrong? Let me check here. Totally unprepared here. Trevor Rogers against Marcus Stroman. Again, they have a open spot in the second game, so it'll be interesting to see who throws there. I couldn't tell from the rookie photos with the costumes, which was absolutely hilarious over the weekend. Marlins got on a plane to New York from Tampa and paraded their rookies around in all kinds of ridiculous costumes. I think Lewin, DLC, and Jesus Sanchez were dressed up as the Teletubbies. They were missing a Tinky Winky, though. They had a Poe, a Lala, and a Dipsy, but they were missing a Tinky Winky. Zach Pop, I saw, was Buzz Lightyear. Jazz was dressed up in a clown costume, which was hilarious. But the Marlins are now up in New York with this for this doubleheader, and again, couldn't really tell if they brought a rookie along, a young guy. I know that Alex was saying possibly Max Meyer, but that's not going to happen because he would be on 4 days rest. He's going to pitch, we believe, on Wednesday in Jacksonville. And Alex, I guess we'll just start right there. How did that first start go? If I remember correctly, it was pretty outstanding.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, just translates perfectly. AAA isn't, that much more of a jump. But in Jacksonville, it kind of is because of where they play and how hitter-friendly it is in the old Southern League. So, man, career high in strikeouts. Slider is absolutely disgusting. I mean, that guy's ready. I mean, I wish that he was on 5 days rest, and maybe we would see him. Probably not, because they're going to use the excuse of, we want to save the year of arbitration and save the year of control, which on the business side, it makes sense. But when guys are ready, I like to see him, man. And I think he's ready. I think Burdick's ready. I think a bunch of guys are ready. But we'll see him next year. Kim Ang said we'll see both those guys in AAA, which will be good. As far as who could start that second game, I mean, who would be in line for it is Sean Morimondo, who threw behind Pablo Lopez. He would be on 5 days rest. So if you want my best guess as to who would start that game, it would be him. But, yeah, Meyer was really good, man, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him next season for sure.
Eli, you're going to have to catch me up here. Where is Pablo in his progression? Because is that a possible start we can see him throw?
Yeah, it is. He just threw his bullpen session yesterday.
It was either yesterday. Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, 21 pitches. And so the guys after a bullpen session, either 2 days after or 3 days after is when they're usually ready to go. He's just, I mean, he's not really stretched out that much. In his rehab start, he threw 31 pitches. So at most, maybe they stretch him out to like 45 or something. It would only be like as an opener, maybe 2 innings max in that second game. I mean, with him, it's the same as with like Moramondo. They'd have to find a spot for him on the 40-man roster and the active roster, but that's not really a big issue at this point because they have other guys already on the IL that they can move to the 60-day. We were talking about this before the stream. Actually, it's wide open in terms of who that guy could be, because it could actually even be somebody. They get a 29th man for a doubleheader game, so it could be. There's probably like 10 different candidates that they could call up, but it's nobody that's in the current rotation at the moment. I guess this is one that, if you want to be excited about this, I guess it's exciting because they could go in so many different directions. But obviously with Pablo, he's the one that it's really important to him to get back on the mound before the season ends. So this is one opportunity to do so. It doesn't seem that he's had any new setbacks over these last couple weeks. So I think whether it's on Tuesday or they fit him in somehow out of the bullpen, or maybe it's the final weekend, I think we will see him in one game before the season ends. Fingers crossed.
We should know for sure.
Go ahead, Alex.
As I was saying before, we should know for sure. We're talking about the end of the AAA schedule, and they don't play again until the 29th, which is 2 days from now. So the Marlins must have taken somebody, on the trip. So I'm sure we'll probably know tomorrow when McPherson and Christina get out to the park, or Daniel get out to the park, who it's going to be. So we should know pretty soon.
Isaac, I'm curious. This is it's such a weird situation with Pablo because obviously sidelined for most of the end of the season, most of the second half, really, not really necessary to see him towards the end of the year here, but it seems like we're going to. So just kind of, what should we expect? Is there anything the Marlins can gain out of this besides just Pablo feeling good about making it back?
Yeah, I think it's more for the pitcher himself. He had a media session on the day that I was covering the game, and it was more about just him mentally wanting to have one final start before he gets into the offseason, just like a clean slate, and just know that he threw a major league game before he goes into that 6 months of a break, ideally. And I think the team would also like to see him healthy, see his velocity back up, and just make sure everything is good, whether it's 2 innings or 1 inning or even 3 or 4. I think they just want to see him one last time before the season ends, for both the player and the team's perspective. And I think it's really important that they do that, actually.
Yeah, Kevin, take us through Pablo's season. Obviously, he couldn't get over this 9K hump. He had this start where he strikes out the first 9 batters of the game. It's an MLB record. And then he doesn't strike anybody out the rest of the game to get into double digits and set a career high. But just kind of put a bow on it. It's been a while since we've seen him. But when we saw him, he was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and we mentioned the big 3, Pablo, Trevor, and Sandy. He's been pretty much, underrated. I think he's maybe one of the most underrated pitchers in the league when you really look at it. I mean, this guy's putting up great stats. It's being overshadowed by Sandy and Trevor, but this guy is one of the solid pitchers that we remember from the 2020 season. He went through that whole season. He really was a big part of that team. In this season, I mean, 9 Ks, and then in Wrigley, he went, I think it was 8 scoreless, if I'm correct. I mean, Pablo's a guy who you could really rely on, and his injuries, I think I've hurt him a lot this season. But besides that, I mean, when he's on that mound, you really could – it's like you have confidence in this guy to really go out there and give you a solid 5-6 innings of work, and knowing that he has a great arsenal, and I think it's really making guys swing and miss. Pablo's a really good pitcher, and I think he's going to be a big part of this team next season if he's on the team, or if whatever happens next season. Hopefully if it's a trade, it's a trade, but I don't see him getting traded. Pablo's just really underrated. That's the only issue I have, and he's not really noticed around the MLB. I don't know if it was John from All Marlins who posted this, but he's having one of the most, one of his best seasons, and it's one of the most underrated seasons because of all these guys that are being talked about. The Scherzers, the Walker Buehlers, and then in the rotation itself, Sandy and Trevor, who have been dominating this year. And I know we're going to talk about awards later, so those guys are for sure some plays that we're going to probably mention in those awards. But Pablo is one that has to be mentioned, who had a good season, and he's been extremely consistent this season when it comes to making his starts, especially right before the injury when he had the 9 straight Ks against the Braves.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, really, he kind of had a better year than Sandy just on face value, I mean, he had 3.03 ERA in 101 innings, 9.89 Ks per nine. Sandy at 3.09, 8.75 Ks per nine. So pretty comparable when you really look at it. He was fantastic, and I think we kind of forgot about it. He actually has a lower FIP than Sandy as well, 3.20. And again, we just kind of forgot about how good he was. And I also forgot that he hasn't pitched since before the All-Star break. He was out. His last start was on July 11th. So we haven't seen him in 2.5 months. And it's easy to forget, with all the stuff that's happened since then. The All-Star break and the trade deadline and the last 2 months of the season and how far how rough they've been. It's easy to forget how great Pablo was. And Eli, I know you love Pablo. We all do here. But just kind of talk us through his season and what the Marlins can take away from it.
Yeah, I was very high on him entering the year. I thought he would. It's really, I mean, the only surprise was that Sandy took yet another step forward to kind of make it pretty definitive that he's the ace of the rotation. But yeah, I was optimistic that Pablo, what we were waiting for is to get more of those swings and misses by using his changeup more often, because that's his one really exceptional pitch. But in addition to doing that, which as expected, he did that because he's a smart guy. I mean, his fastball command just got better this year too. And you could see how he was just a lot more consistent at putting it up in the zone. And he's somebody that has good velocity, but not Sandy velocity, not even Trevor velocity. It peaks at about 97, and he usually sits like 94, 95, 93. But when he gets it, up in the zone, it's a really great pitch, and we saw that this year. So the fact that he has just those two things, with him really throughout his career, the one thing that still has been inconsistent is his breaking ball. And he put a lot of work into that entering this spring training. Like if you listen to him, that was the one thing that he kept talking about is getting that curveball better. We saw it like hit or miss. There were a couple individual games and moments where it really stepped up, but that's still, the one area that he could still get better. There still is upside with him to get even better if he does get the right feel for that pitch, if he gets the right arm slot for it in order to get chases out of the zone. That's still a big question mark. There are a lot of really talented and smart pitchers that never really figure that out. So that's really the one lingering question with him. It's just, I do think it is so important that he feels that he's back to 100% health, going into this offseason. And he's somebody that, personally, I think it's so important to have him around, even though other smart people have brought him up as a potential trade chip. I really don't see it that way. As much as we like the next wave of pitching prospects coming up through the organization, I don't think you could take for granted, what Pablo is doing and the level that he's pitching at. It is very, very unlikely that any of these individual guys that we feel so high on are going to be better than him. It's a lot more difficult to replace than you might think. And some of that has just been borne out in watching this season play out, and just you could see in the results that all the guys they've tried to put into his place, it's night and day between the kind of production and consistency you get.
Yeah. Isaac, I want to go to you because we've had discussions about Pablo as a trade chip. And after this season, injury concerns, but obviously fantastic results. And I think Eli's right. People take for granted how hard it is to become Pablo Lopez in this league, a pitcher of that quality, right? How much has to happen for things to shake out for even a guy you're as high on like Edward Cabrera, who's seen struggle, Max Meyer, Sixto Sanchez, one of these guys to be consistently as good as Pablo Lopez has been and has only gotten better every year. Eli, I remember before the season we did that thing, who would you trust most in a one-game playoff? And I put Pablo number one because he had been the rock of this Marlins pitching staff. It felt like it's just always a guy you could turn to every 5 days. Obviously, injuries kind of changed that, Isaac, but I'm just curious, what do you see in terms of value in Pablo as a trade piece? And do you think he's more valuable there or in Miami long-term?
Well, because of the injuries, I think and even without the injuries, I think he's way more valuable to a team like the Marlins than he would be as a trade candidate. And I think the injuries sort of definitely, you'd be selling him, you'd be selling low on the guy. And I think just like you said, like look at a guy like Sandy Alcantara. He was one of the guys that just, really came up and was amazing. And Pablo Lopez is doing the same thing. And he's had some like scary shoulder injuries. But to me, that's a number 2 starter in Pablo Lopez. Like you said, he's had a better season than Sandy in some ways. Obviously, half the starts and half the innings pitched, but he's done it. He's pitched very well against tough teams, and he's a guy where you have Sandy, Pablo, Trevor at 1, 2, 3. I don't think you trade any of those three guys, in my opinion, especially if the goal is to win immediately, which it should be, and it is. You don't trade any of those three, especially Pablo or Sandy.
Yeah, I remember. We talked about on Fish Stripes Unfiltered. We talked about the trades that the Marlins made, and one of the ones we discussed was the Pablo Lopez. I think it was the David Phelps trade.
Yes,
and how big of a win that was for the Marlins. Because I remember when Pablo Lopez came over, kind of being, keeping an eye on him. He was a middle of the top 30 prospect, on the prospect list for Pipeline. And then he came over and he was just dealing nonstop. It felt like every night out you were watching him. I think he was in Jacksonville in New Orleans. He was just dealing every night. And then he came up in the middle of the season in an emergency situation, and he was so good that he stayed up for the rest of the year. And since then, it's just been better every year. And you talked about Sandy taking a big step. Eli, Pablo took a huge step this year as well. I mean, he went from a 3.61 ERA to a 3.03 ERA. Obviously, last year he was the rock of the Marlins rotation because he was the only guy that didn't get COVID pretty much. He made all 11 starts last season, but he was just he was fantastic. And yeah, I think he's a guy. He's a huge part of this Marlins future. Would you agree, Alex Carver?
Yeah, for sure. I think he should be. I know, like you said, that he's been brought up in trade talks, and he should be because he's still a young guy. He's got 3 years of control left. He's not a free agent until 2025. So on a bad team or a team that doesn't have Sandy Alcantara, because the Marlins aren't a good team, but the Marlins have Sandy, who is pretty much the bona fide ace. On a team that doesn't have Sandy, he could be an ace. So, man, I mean, that could be a guy that another team builds around. So it would make sense to bring his name up. But as Isaac said, I don't really think you get your value out of him because of the injury troubles. So, if they are going to trade him, I think it should be later on and not now. But for right now, I agree. I think you keep all three of those guys, Trevor, Sandy, and Pablo. And then just to call attention to it, I mean, in a similar amount of innings as 2019, as you stated with him getting better every single year, you're right. I think what's really been the difference is his ability to pitch out of the stretch this year was far and away better because he left so many more guys on base than he did in 2019. Throw away 2020, not many innings, but I mean, 2019, it was a 68.4 left on base, and this year almost a 79% left on base. That could be attributed to his addition of his new pitch, as Eli was saying. So yeah, man, a guy that just keeps getting better, still controllable, has got 3 years left, all under arbitration eligible control. So yeah, keep him around. I mean, if you're going to win right now, that's 3 of the 5. So that's definitely good to see.
No, and here's the thing also, you fleeced the Mariners. Like, you fleeced them completely with that trade. And if you trade Pablo, you're hoping to get similar or better value. That's why I would just stay away. When you got like such a great deal, an A+ trade like that, you keep the guy in that situation.
Kev, I know you've been our trade man on here. You are excited for a big, active Marlins offseason. Just, would you do it? Would you trade Pablo?
It's really hard to really say now because of the injury. I mean, I would really wait. I would say wait it out, But if it's a trade that you just can't resist, if it's just the guy that you really want, Brian Reynolds, for example, let's just keep that as an example. You pull the trigger. I would say I would pull the trigger. But it's just like Isaac mentioned. They traded David Phelps, who later got a Tommy John surgery. Miami got great value out of this guy. I mean, and they're still going to get it, and I think he's still going to provide a lot for this team. And I do think that he should stay on the team. And I would wait till the trade deadline. If he's not performing and he still holds some kind of value to the team, trade deadline. But as of right now, I'm keeping the guy. I'm letting him play with the Marlins. And he's a number 2 starter on this team. So he holds a lot more value to Miami, who isn't a big market team. They're a small market team. He makes sense. And he's a free agent until 2025. So it just makes sense to keep the guy right now. Now, if you told me this at the trade deadline around that time, I would have said, yeah. I would have said trade him. He looks like the odd guy out. But right now, no, I wouldn't trade him at all.
Yeah. Another option is also – sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, one more thing is they'll probably avoid kangaroo court with him because this is a guy that's been injured so much. It's coming up. I think this is his first year of arbitration eligibility. So, he's just going to sign a 1-year contract, and he's probably not going to be for that much money. I mean, so it's going to be a 1-year deal. They're going to avoid arbitration, and that's a money save for sure. So, yeah, I mean, controllable. It's going to be cheap. He's good. keep him. Just keep him around.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say another option would be to buy low and extend him too. Not a crazy 6-year deal here. A little 3-year contract extension where you'd be buying low. I think that would be that would behoove the Marlins' interests for sure.
Yeah, it would be, because it's such a good idea to get these 3 guys locked in now. Get out in front while they're cheap and they're controllable, and lock in Sandy, Pablo, and Trevor. It would be a really good piece of business. I don't think all 3 will happen in one offseason. I could picture 2 of them happening at most. Like, I could see
Pablo
them locking up Sandy and then, coming out of nowhere and locking up Pablo. I don't think they would lock up all 3, because that's a bit of a risk as well, because you risk injuries with all 3 of these guys. But yeah, it would be a good idea. And I think Isaac made a great point here, which is that if you trade him, you're hoping you get back what you got in the trade you made for him, right? So it's like, you don't want to screw that up, and you made such a great deal. And in any deal you make, you would love to get a Pablo Lopez. So obviously, I think Kevin's right that, if Brian Reynolds, if that's the, the deal breaker there, I may pull the trigger just because of how desperate of a need they have for offense. But yeah, it would be really hard to trade Pablo for anything else, man. And he's been so fantastic and such a huge part. And he's a great dude. Talking to Pablo, he's a great dude, and he's a good personality to have around the clubhouse. And we know that the Marlins have been huge on character recently, so Pablo would be great. But I did not expect us to dive into 20 minutes of Pablo Lopez talk to start the stream, which I'm totally down for, because I love Pablo. But we're going to keep it moving here, and we're going to get into what we wanted to do on the show today, which Kevin proposed to me 2 minutes before we started doing the show, but I think it's a great idea. So this is our second to last stream of the season. In the last stream of the season before the final series with the Phillies, we're going to kind of do a look ahead to the 2022 offseason. That'll kind of be our 2022 offseason preview. We obviously did some of that with Craig Mish, but I think we can really kind of go into detail and just kind of give our thoughts on what the Marlins will do based on what we know and based on what they need to get done. But for today, we're going to kind of recap the 2021 season, kind of look back at it. We did first half awards after the All-Star break. We're going to do second half awards and full season awards now, including a second half MVP. So let's start. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up. So most surprising player. This can be good. This can be bad. But Isaac, who was the player this season that you say surprised you the most?
You know what? I can't say surprising so much, because, he had a great spring. But for the first half of the season, just the injuries and the bereavement list, I would say Trevor Rogers just really cementing himself and being a Rookie of the Year candidate, really like a favorite for most of the year. And like I said, he had an okay year last year. You saw the peripherals were good, so you weren't too worried. But the way he dominated spring, and for him to just dominate after that first inning of his first start, straight dominance the first half of the season. And obviously he slowed down a little bit, but he came back and struck out 10 his last time out. So I'd say Trevor Rogers was the most pleasant surprise for sure.
Eli, your most surprising player of the 2021 season?
I guess I'm taking this to mean like from opening day onward, right? Because if you back up a little bit further, then I guess the answer would be Anthony Bender, who I'd never heard of, who I never even cared to think about until he stepped on a spring training mound. But, I bought into him pretty quickly. And so I guess I'll give him an honorable mention, because he really came out of nowhere from the start of spring training. But once it was going into opening day, I think a lot of us understood that he would be able to have some success in the big leagues, and he was able to do that. I mean, Trevor is a great pick. I remember Craig Mish was very high on him coming out of spring training as well. He said something that I thought was a little bit outlandish in making a comparison between him and Dontrelle Willis. And as it turns out, that was not nearly as much of a hyperbole as we thought it was. I mean, I think even if you had really high expectations for Trevor coming out of spring training, he definitely exceeded those expectations. Yep. I mean, obviously, Brian De La Cruz, he only gave us a part of a season, but what he did in that part of the season was way above what anybody could have hoped for once that trade was made. I liked Jesus Sanchez coming into the season, so with him, not so much. With Sandy, I think you always need to just expect him to take a little step forward every single year. So that one, not super shocking either. Jazz. Yeah, I don't want to mention every single person. So with those guys, I think they got it covered. I think Isaac, I would have to go with Isaac. That at least entering opening day, Trevor was the guy that I thought was good, but he even reached a whole nother level than we could have hoped for.
Kevin Burrell, who were you most surprised by this year?
I'm between a couple guys, and I'm not gonna say De La Cruz because it was only half a season, but that was like the main guy I was thinking of. And now you guys mentioned Trevor. It's actually it's true. You know, this guy steps in opening day, has a pretty bad start against St. Louis, and then after that he just takes off, wins 2 Rookies of the Month, gets an All-Star selection, and this guy's probably in the running to get Rookie of the Year. I'm gonna go Jesus Sanchez. You know, and hear me out. This guy, he was dominating AAA. And his first stint up in the MLB, it went horrible. I mean, he barely had playing time. But now this guy, you know, he's patient at the mound. He's working the pitches. He's doing, and his defense is okay. It's gotten better. But you know, he's really impressed me. And I think he surprised me. I really did expect this guy to have a whatever time in the big leagues, but he's I think passed a lot of our expectations. I would say of what we expected from him, and at least in the big leagues in his first season on the team. So. You know, Jesus is, I think, the guy I would go with, but Trevor makes a lot of sense when you really look back at it. You know, what we expected from the guy at the start from what we're getting now and what we're expecting from him next season as well. You know, the guy has cemented himself to be hopefully maybe the second guy in that rotation if he outbeats Pablo for that second spot or even the third one, which makes a lot of sense. And now, obviously, the other name would be De La Cruz, but I think that would be more of like a second half MVP type of pick for anyone.
Yeah, Alex Carver, I want to go to you, and I want to do major league and minor league for you because you're fishing on the farm. So I know there's going to be a lot of minor league stuff going on. There were a lot of guys kind of coming out of nowhere with the minor leagues. So give us the majors and the minors.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I could go a million different ways with the majors, or the minors. The majors, you guys pretty much covered it. I would have said Bender, just as a guy that came out of absolutely nowhere, as Eli said. De La Cruz, who's been absolutely great. If you want to go the naysayer route and be like the negative one, that was like surprisingly bad. I'm not going to say Alfaro because I wasn't expecting him to be good. I wasn't expecting Isan Diaz to be good. Like, I'm not going to say any of those guys that I kind of expected not to be good. But the one that I would say that was kind of like surprisingly disappointing for me is Brian Anderson. He did have the injury. He had troubles with the injury. We all know. But even while he was playing, it wasn't that good. His WRC plus was right at 100, which is the lowest he's posted since his rookie year. And then he just can't stay on the field. And that sucks, especially for any player, but especially for a guy that you look at, and I looked at as pretty much a cornerstone, especially at a position where the Marlins don't have a lot of guys. So it sucked to see him not do well in the first place and then get hurt, multiple times. So that sucked. So yeah, that was a surprisingly disappointing pick. And then if you want to go minors, I mean, I know we talk about the same guys a lot, and we just talked about the same guys a lot on Earning Their Stripes, me and Daniel. But I don't think anybody, not even Daniel DeVivo, expected Yuri Perez as the youngest player in minor league baseball to do what he did. So that was incredible to see. I mean, I thought he had good stuff, but I was not expecting him to give up 1 run in all his home games, which is a stat that Eli found. Like, ERA was so low across the board. He went to 2 different levels, and again, 18 years old. So incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Definitely a surprise. The other one is my guy with Troy Johnston. I liked the simplicity that he had, but I was not expecting him to do what he did and playing the entire schedule and being right near the top in a lot of stat categories. So those guys are really good, man. And then there's other guys you can go to down in the lower levels if you want to, but I'll leave it there because I could give you a million more. But those 2 guys for sure are the surprises if you want just a couple in the minor league level. And I think both of those guys could have big ceilings and big futures with the Marlins.
Yeah, you guys kind of hit on the big name guys. I definitely think Jesus, after what he did in the 2020 season, going 1 for 29 and just looking lost at the plate, he's been such a revelation in the second half, and he's been really, really good since he came up. And obviously, I was shocked by how hot he got out of the gate in AAA. How about just off the beaten path a little bit, a guy everybody kind of forgets about? How about Steven Okert? This guy's been awesome since the Marlins scooped him up out of nowhere. And I just remember them picking him up and just being like a nothing signing, and he's been really good since he came over. So I'll just go off the beaten path there and say that it hasn't had a huge impact on the season because he hasn't been here a lot of the year. But I'm going to say Steven Okert as a big surprise I don't think anybody expected him to become a big part of the bullpen in the second half of the
Yeah,
season.
I love that. That's a great pick.
But he's been really good. Yeah.
And you're right about under the radar because the timing of his signing was weird. Like it wasn't even early enough to have him at Major League spring training. They signed him like during spring training and then sent him up to the alternate site. And I didn't think much of it. It was weird because in his little sample in the big leagues prior to coming to the Marlins, he'd been all right. And but again, the timing of his signing was strange. Then he did great at AAA. Usually that doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of translating that to the majors, and it kind of has with him. I remember when he got called up, the red flag to me is that he just gives up a lot of fly balls. At the same time, if you're playing home games at Lone Depot, you can get away with that. Like he is a really nice fit for that home ballpark. He has continued to allow a lot of fly balls, but he's also allowing like a lot of pop-ups too this year. Like you just watch him pitch this year and it's not really that fluky. He has just been legitimately really great. Not a ton of like high leverage situations. They do have him under control for a bunch of years, beyond this year. Like he could be around for a little while, even though you never like to do that for any bullpen only type of guys. It's a great find for sure.
Yeah. And 1.93 ERA in 32 innings since coming over. I'm going to check the game log and see when his first appearance was. It was actually back in April, and then in June is when he really got called up, and June 30th is when he came up and has been great ever since. So Stephen Okert, I like that one, and I'm glad somebody agreed with me. Most disappointing. I think this could go a lot of different ways. I think Anthony Bass is going to be a popular name here for sure. But I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. I'm also curious to see if anybody has Jazz in this section. So Isaac, go ahead with your most disappointing player.
Well, yeah, no, there was no preparation for this, so this was a little difficult. So just be putting on the spot. Definitely not Jazz. I think he really exceeded some expectations, and I think just being the 9th rated rookie in baseball in last week's pipeline rating, I think he had a fine year. There's a lot of stuff maybe we can put Jazz's defense as most.
That's kind of what I was going to say.
And then what was the other? Anthony Bass. Honestly, we were he's going to be a good reliever, but I didn't think he was going to be that good. So I wasn't totally shocked to see him shit the bed all over the place in the first month. So most disappointing. I might have to go what Alex said with Brian Anderson. I know it's not really his fault. He just had a tough time staying healthy, and when he was getting consistent, it's when he got hurt again. So just injuries and performance. Unfortunately, I'd have to go with Brian Anderson, but I know he'll be back. I know he'll be fine because he is one of the better players on this team. But definitely, it would have to be Brian Anderson because you'd think going into the year he'd be an integral part of the team, offensively and defensively.
Absolutely,
he couldn't stay on the field, and when he struggled to remain consistent, and the injuries derailed that all the time. So Brian Anderson is my pick.
Kevin, who were you let down by this season?
I'm going to go Alfaro, and it might be a long explanation, but it makes a little bit of sense. 2019, he had a good year. It was a full 162-game season. 2020, he had his little issues. At the start of the season, the COVID obviously hit. So Francisco Cervelli took over, and then he had his injury. And pretty much it was Chad Wallach's job after that. This season, I think we all expected Alfaro to be pretty good. We expected him to have a similar 2019 season. The guy just couldn't get it going. He had his injury right before the All-Star break, if I'm correct. He had he had the walk off in against San Francisco, and he was pretty good then. And he just hasn't been able to hit. His defense has been horrible. I don't think he's thrown out a single runner this season, if I'm correct. Maybe at third, but besides that, he just hasn't been able to do it. Nick Fortes has played 4 games, has been playing better than Alfaro already. Peyton Henry's playing pretty damn good. So, yeah, if Alfaro's on the Marlins next season, they're not trying to win. He's been extremely disappointing to me. I expected more from the guy. I didn't expect a great season, but at least a little bit above mediocre would have been, I think, the right way to stay because, he had a good 2019 season. That's what we went off of. 2020, we really can't count it. He was injured through most of it. We knew about the 18 Marlins with the COVID. So, yeah, Alfaro is my choice. I think you could obviously go Bass. I wish I could go Yimmy. He's not on the team, but, Yimmy was pretty disappointing. He literally turned on us halfway through the season and started just shitting the bed. But, yeah, I'm going to go Alfaro. Isan, I never expected him to do anything pop good with the team in his call-up. Obviously Jazz had beat him. So, yeah, Alfaro's the pick. I think there's so many ways you could go with it, but
Yeah.
I think right now with what we expected and what we got, Alfaro, man, yeah, that's the pick.
Yeah, if Alfaro actually struck out at a lower rate than he did last year, which is crazy because it felt like he was striking out every at bat, just swinging at bullshit pitches in the dirt and just whiffing. It seems that all accounts are that the Marlins are going to move on from Alfaro next year, and they should. They have to upgrade at that
They
position.
better.
They have no other choice. Eli, I'm curious about your answer here.
I'm with Kevin Alfaro.
Yeah.
I wasn't, super enthused about him entering camp. He was saying all the right things about working hard over the offseason and trying to mature as a player. So I didn't really buy into that. I just thought, there was maybe a potential for him to at least revert back to his 2019 self. As the season has played out, we've seen that in a lot of cases, that players that really did dip off last year, for a lot of them, it was an anomaly. They were able to get back what they were to who they were before the COVID shortened season. But with him, there's just been no maturity as a hitter. He has been, for the stats nerds, I mean, it matches the eye test. But for the people that go into the numbers, they know that he is on record. We have 20 years of pitch data in terms of, approximating strikes and balls. And he has the highest chase rate out of anybody that we've ever seen get any decent playing time for any team in the majors. And there's just been really no adjustment in that regard. That's something that you would hope that somebody with experience would be able to adjust to. And you got to imagine that the Marlins coaches have talked to him about his approach and how to make those adjustments. And it just has not happened at all. And with him, I mean, the biggest disappointment that I kind of took for granted is his power. We know that he has amazing raw power. Some of the best on the entire team, and really the best out of any catcher in baseball. I don't think there's another catcher in baseball that has as much raw power as he does, and yet he has 4 home runs in 92 games.
Crazy.
Not in my wildest nightmares could I have thought that he would have so little opportunities, so few times where he actually barreled up the ball. If nothing else, even if he's making poor decisions, you'd think just by accident he could stumble into double-digit home runs as the primary catcher over a full-length season. So that's the biggest thing, in addition to everything else that Kevin already brought up.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Eli. He just never hit. He never hit for power. It was crazy to me, considering what that's what the Marlins brought him over to do. So, Alex Carver, I think I know where you'll go with minor leagues, but I want to hear both of your answers here.
Yeah, the major league one, I'm in agreement with Kevin and Eli. I mean, the Marlins got nothing out of that trade for JC Realmuto. I mean, maybe not nothing. I shouldn't say that. Let's see how Sixto comes back. I'll wait on that.
Yeah, Alex is really low on Sixto.
Yeah,
I'm low.
Jesus
I'm low.
Christ.
We were talking about this the other
He
day.
said nothing. Oh,
Yeah. I'm not going to say nothing yet. I'll correct myself. I won't say it's nothing yet. We got to see how Sixto comes back.
They got nothing this year. They got nothing from
Exactly.
Sixto Sanchez. So they had no value this year from that JT Realmuto trade, and it was a big year for it, I think.
Yeah, and Will Stewart did not do well in the minors and AA, and Alfaro is just the pass balls that can't throw guys out. Hitting is just so sporadic. I mean, he shows it and then he just goes absolutely 100% cold. So, and there's more cold than hot. So Alfaro's the pick for the majors. If you want one more, a name that wasn't brought up, I'll give you Monte Harrison. I thought Monte Harrison could have been a really good player for the Marlins, and his Marlins career, as we hear from Craig Mish and a lot of other people, is very likely over. And that sucks because I think he's really simplified his approach here late in the season in the minors. Ethan, you were there. You saw the home runs.
Yep.
I mean, he really looks a lot simpler. I think he could go somewhere else and be a good player, but I don't think it will be with the Marlins because of the character issues, and that's terrible. So that's another really big disappointment because I thought he could have been a good player. Really athletic guy with huge power, and good speed. So that's another one. Minor league levels, the main one is JJ Bleday. There's no getting past it. Absolutely 100%. Yeah. Just could not make any forward strides with the bat. It is the jump up to the AA level. There was a 2020 missed season, but everybody missed the 2020 season. And you have guys, like I mentioned, like Troy, that are coming out of nowhere. Meisner, it was in the same draft, and he's surpassing them. So those guys are surpassing him. At least Meisner is surpassing him. And I think Troy might be able to in the future. So yeah, he's been a big disappointment for sure. There's other ones down there, but that's your main one. So yeah, I mean, those are the three that I'll give you. Just keep it short, but yeah, I mean, Monte for me, I'll probably be the only one that will bring him up, but that sucks because you're going to lose a quality player.
Yeah.
It's apparently not the attitude's just not there, so it sucks.
Yeah.
And I want to say with Monte, the issue was he never really got a chance. I mean, you really look at it, 2020 season a little bit, but this season barely. I don't think he may have been up once or twice as a pinch hitter. That's pretty much about it. We haven't been able to see, a consistent Monte Harrison playing every day, and that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why, he's not up here right now. He's we could call him a disappointment, but another reason, his character. He had that issue with Marte, and then they don't even want him up in the MLB at this point. So
he had 10 at bats all year.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy what has happened with him. Obviously, there's reasons outside of baseball that his Marlins career is over. And I would love to see him flourish elsewhere because we've talked to Monte on earning their stripes. He was awesome. Seems like a good guy. And I hope he succeeds. I hope all these guys succeed. I hope all of them find success in baseball. It just seems like if it happens for Monte Harrison, it'll happen outside the Marlins organization. And I mean, that Yelich trade is donezo, but it's just, it's very disappointing. All the other guys got their fair shake and Monte just didn't. And there's reasons for it. But yeah, it's certainly unfortunate for him. For me, my biggest disappointment, I'm going to go with pair these two guys together. It's Braxton Garrett and Nick Neidert.
Okay.
I've never been super high on Braxton Garrett, and he just came up and it was such a just nothing really. I was so disappointed by it. I thought he looked okay in his 2 starts last year, and I was hoping he would improve. They kept him in AAA. I thought they would send him back to AA. They kept him in AAA, and just nothing really, not great in AAA either. I hope them, I think it would be a good idea to try and sell on him and get a team to bite that thinks they can turn him around because somebody's going to believe in that curveball, but just no uptick in velocity, struggling to throw 92, very disappointing. And then Nick Neidert, I was really high on this kid. He had a great spring, and I was actually saying he should start with the big league club over Trevor Rogers because Trevor didn't have any AAA innings. Obviously, retroactively, I look like an idiot on that one. I just wished that I do believe that he could have benefited from consistent time in the major leagues, but the roster was in such fluctuation with all the injuries at that time that it just couldn't work out that way. But even when he was here, it just wasn't great. And the 2020 season just completely derailed him. He was so great in 2019, and it just hasn't gone right for him. So I'm going to say Nick Neidert. I was really hoping that he could kind of finally break through and find his way into the rotation this year, but he's just been completely surpassed by some of these other arms in the system, and I just don't see him factoring in long-term into the rotation here in Miami anymore. So yeah, I'm going to go with those two guys. And yeah, Alex, you're absolutely right on Blade. I'm not sure there's a bigger disappointment in the entire organization than what happened with Blade this year. He ended up looking okay, like he got the numbers back up towards average, towards 100 weighted runs created plus towards the end of the year. And there's spurts in there, if you look at it, that you say, okay, this is a good player, but he's got to do it consistently, and he never did it consistently, and he just never impacted the baseball enough to do it consistently over the course of a season. So, yeah, Blade for me, easy. The next one we're going to move into, I think this should be unanimous here. It's the second half MVP. There's only one guy, and he's sitting behind Eli. We can kind of go around and talk about him, but there's nobody else that you can say besides Brian De La Cruz, really, for second half MVP, I think. And Eli, this is your guy, so I'll let you lead off here.
I was surprised you positioned it that way because I do agree that would be my pick. Up top, I want to give a shout out to Jesus Sanchez. I mean, with the power hitting that he's done, especially over the last month or so, which is like right up there with some of the better power hitting of any player in baseball, and certainly the best power hitting stretch for any Marlins player like during this rebuild. Like Sanchez has been close, although as an all around player, all around value and all that stuff. Yeah, that's for sure. DLC, who even now hitting like 320 on the season. I have a whole article about him on the stuff that's sustainable and the stuff that isn't. He's going to come back down to earth a little bit. Anyway, you slice it, this has been one of the better 50 game starts to a Marlins career offensively that we've seen in recent memory. It's outstanding. He's and I mean, for everything else that he does in the batter's box, we know about him as a defender. The more I've seen of him defensively, the more I nitpick and wonder if he's really a center fielder. I think he's more likely going to be in the corners. That's kind of where he actually gives you significant value moving forward. But still, great arm over there, good instincts over there. Runs the bases pretty well, and people seem to love him off the field, man. I mean, his teammates love him.
Yeah, he has a
Media
great
loves him.
personality.
Yeah, and
He's got a great personality.
He's infectious. He's always smiling. It's a lot of fun to just see him fit in so immediately with this team. All this stuff is kind of interconnected too. I don't want to go too far into this, but we had somebody like Bleday entering this year. I think a lot of us thought Bleday would be up during the second half of the season, especially if they were to trade away like Marte and Duvall. In the way that his season has gone, I wonder if they still would have made like this exact trade for De La Cruz if they already had Bleday being major league ready around that same time as was projected. The fact that he wasn't and that there was some uncertainty about that may have had a role in why they chose De La Cruz specifically as the type of return that they would want in that Yimi Garcia trade. I wonder about that. That's something we may learn more about as we get farther away from it. I think this guy's going to have a really long major league career. If everything goes right for him, I've compared him to some players that are like fringe all-stars when everything really comes together. He's 24 years old. He turns 25 right after the season. This isn't necessarily the peak. But yeah, what he's done right now it's been awesome. And as the season goes on, I give them credit for playing him pretty much every single day to give him this opportunity. Yes. And he has not slumped at all. He has just kept it going. It's been a huge bright spot for this entire second half of the season, while pretty much everybody else around him has disappointed, not giving him much help. He's been a bright spot.
I want to spend some more time on the other awards, so I'm going to kind of speed this one up because I think we all are in agreement here. There's really only one choice. Jesus Sanchez. I want to talk to Alex about him in a second, and then also get his minor league MVP for the second half. But with De La Cruz, so all the talk has been about the BABIP. The BABIP has gone down. It's now down to 400, and he's hitting 314. Obviously, 400 is still really high. But Eli, you've said this before. He has had a high BABIP
every step of the way.
His minor league career. Every step he's had a BABIP basically when it's been consistent ABs basically over 300. In AAA this year was 373. He was hitting 324. So it's still happening. And at some point he's been doing this for 2 months. He's been here playing every single day since they traded for him at the trade deadline, and he's been doing this nonstop since they acquired him. It's just been fantastic. 130 weighted runs created plus. He caught Jazz in WAR in 59 games. And we all know that Jazz obviously has had defensive struggles. But for me, the most impressive thing is that every time I look at his Fangraphs page, his K rate goes down and down and down and down. I looked at it a couple weeks ago. It was 28. Looked at it again. It was like in the 26s, 25s, 24. Now it's at 23.7%. It just keeps dropping. His walk rate keeps going up. He's up to 8.8%, which is, some of the highest. He's always been a pretty good walk guy. So it's just, again, we'll see how spring training goes, how the offseason goes, what kind of acquisitions they make. But they killed that trade. They absolutely fleeced the Astros. Yimi went over there and he was solid for a little while. And then I saw recently that his numbers have been terrible since he went over there. But I mean, DLC, yeah, and it's just been fantastic. And again, he looks like LeBron James. I'm glad that started catching on because I saw it and I was like, wow, he really looks like LeBron James. But nobody had ever been talking about it, and then it started becoming a thing. You can see the bond he has in the locker room with the young guys like Lewin and Jesus. It's really awesome. But yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about him. But, Alex, I do want to talk to you about Jesus Sanchez because, obviously, the 13 home runs, he's had a great second half. Missed a month because of COVID, and he's still been great. I can only imagine what his year would look like. He might have 20 home runs if he doesn't miss that month because of COVID in half a season, basically. I think he's played like 60 games. So just talk to me about him and how much he's improved this year over last year. And then I want to hear your second half minor league MVP because there were some really good finishes on the farm this year.
Yeah, for sure. Jesus, you saw it early. I mean, we saw it in early in minor league season, and he was just absolutely freaking mashing baseballs. Clear cut, huge power potential. I think the swing was definitely simplified, looked a little bit bigger as well in terms of weight. Last year, came up in the COVID year and really wasn't sure of himself. He said that himself, that he wasn't really having fun on the baseball field anymore, which is, you never like to see that. So that definitely had a toll on him. But man, just fixed his mind, fixed his body, got his swing right, and you saw his full potential on display at the major and minor league level this year. It's just a guy that has extreme power potential. The defense, I mean, I keep talking about that barehanded play and how hard that is to do, but it's definitely true. Yeah, I think this guy has a huge future as an outfielder with the Marlins, because I think he's definitely going to be good, and I think that the Marlins should definitely give him that starting job. I think that should be locked in right now, that he's a starting right fielder in 2022, because he's been amazing. 10 home runs in the second half, like you said, really huge. Awesome to see him finishing strong. And then you said you wanted minor league. Isaac put it in the chat just now, and this is the only guy that I had in mind. Well, not the only one, but the main guy I had in mind is Cam Meisner. I mean, the start of the season was not good. I guess it hasn't really been only second half, because he kind of started turning it on in like mid to late June. But man, I've said it so many times that he got on base in like 31 straight games, WRC plus at 145. Yeah, that guy absolutely took off and was absolutely everything that the Marlins could have hoped for when they drafted him. It's a competitive balance pick. So yeah, I really like Cam Meisner. We had him on the show. You guys know that. Really cool guy. Definitely understands the science behind hitting, and that's what he put to work this year, man. And I think he's been really good. He's also learned center field. Good player, man. I think he's going to be really good. I think he could challenge I think he should be able to challenge in spring training. I think he has an outside shot, maybe against some guys like Burdick. If the Marlins don't sign a corner outfielder, I would give the lead, overall going into spring training to Burdick. You got DLC too. You got to talk about that. But I would give it to Burdick because of prospect pedigree and because of how high the Marlins are on him. You hear Kim Ang talk about him a lot. But Meisner's not far away, man. So it's not going to be a short leash in terms of these outfielders if they keep them all around. Yeah. And Meisner could be a guy that we see very shortly. So I think he's going to be a great player.
Yeah, it really got himself back into the center field discussion in terms of the outfielders, who was kind of falling off a bit. Like you said, slow start in high A this year, and then turned it on completely in the second half, went to double A. He kind of did what you were looking for Blade to do. Get out, he got out to a slow start, and then he turned it on, started hitting consistently. That was something that Blade was never able to do, and that was what Meisner did. And I think it kind of, I don't think he went past him overall, but he's got himself back into that discussion for sure. Next one, this one I think is a pretty easy one as well. Isaac, I'm going to go to you. Your Cy Young winner for the Marlins in 2021.
Well, when you said on the previous one that it was going to be unanimous, that's where I thought you were going with Cy Young, because second half MVP, that was a little bit. But yeah, no, it's for anyone's answer, it's got to be Sandy Alcantara, the ace. I'm his biggest fanboy. The guy is just phenomenal. Pitches more and more, and he just gets better and better and better. And even when the defense lets him down, even when the offense lets him down, he's just tremendous. Any team would be lucky to have him. 25 teams would probably have him at number one. Unless you're the Yankees with Garrett Cole or the Dodgers with Walker Buehler, he's your number one. So Cy Young, and he would be my MVP as well, Sandy Alcantara, by far. Adam Duvall was my first half MVP because he's just delivered the only offense that the Marlins had. So overall, the whole season, by far, Cy Young and MVP would be Sandy Alcantara.
Kevin, I know you're going to – I think we're all going to go the same way here, but I just want somebody else to talk about Sandy. So just talk to me about Sandy.
Well, if you're talking about Sandy Leon, I mean, he's had a great second half, but I mean, we'll get into that later, of course. Pitching
he
wise,
could have been the MVP. He's like,
he could be the Cy Young winner. He's been so great on the mound.
He's been great on the mound. No, but Sandy Alcantara, he's been great. I mean, especially this second half, almost had a no hitter. He keeps setting his career high in strikeouts. I mean, we saw it. He was 12, then 13, then 14, or if it was 15, but. Sandy just keeps getting better and better every single start. The worst part about it is he's not even getting paid. If I'm correct, he's getting paid like $500K. He's not even getting paid $1 million, which still shocks me right now. But I mean, Sandy really went through it tough because the Marlins did not give this guy run support, and he kept them in games through the whole way. And I'll remember the St. Louis game. He pitched the whole game. The Marlins couldn't get a run. pitched the whole game, couldn't get a run. And at the end of the day, he blew it. But I mean, you can't blame the guy for doing that. The Washington game, I'm pretty sure the Marlins were winning that game. It was like 1-0. So, I mean, you really look at it, Sandy just doesn't get run support. He had a couple bad starts in the first half, which is, I think, why we all agreed that Trevor was the first half Cy Young. I think some people said Pablo, but if you're talking Cy Young the whole year, Sandy's the man. He better get extended quickly, and you better give him what he wants because this guy's the ace of the rotation. He's number one. He's going to be the number one guy for a long time. I mean, that's all I could say. And if he gets traded or if they don't give him a sign, they don't extend them, the Marlins probably made one of the worst decisions they've made since this regime has entered. I mean, that's the only way you could really look at it. But, I mean, there's a lot of positives you could talk about Sandy. There's not many negatives, really, when it comes to Sandy. If you really want to talk about a negative, you could talk about the game in Los Angeles that, it was not a good game. But
in Colorado,
he makes up for those games. And Colorado, yes. Yeah. He makes up for those games, which is the best part about it. I mean, the Colorado game, after that, I think he was really good. I mean, and then he had the Mets game, which was an okay game. After that, he's just been on a hot streak. This guy is the ace of the rotation. I'm not going to say he's my MVP because I still have to think about that a little more, but he is one of the best players on this team, top five best player on this team. And I would say since entering the regime, he's been the best pitcher the Marlins have had.
Yeah,
since that Colorado start, actually, I just looked it up. 64 innings pitched, 9 games started, a 1.82 ERA, a 2.34 FIP, an opponent's batting average of 200 flat, and he has struck out 74 guys in those 64 innings pitched. So he struck out more than a batter per inning. That's just dominance.
He's done everything that you expect of an ace.
Yes,
he's pitched the whole season. He before the season. In his spring training press conference, I wrote the Sandy preview article, and I talked about how adamant he was that he wanted to go 200 innings and how committed he was to being the leader of the staff. You just saw it right away. And so that's why, some people might have said Sandy was the most surprising storyline of the year. No chance. I knew this was coming. I knew he was going to get over 200 innings. He was so adamant about it. He got over 200 over the weekend, which I was so happy for him. He's been a horse. He's going 7, 8, 9, pretty much 6 every time. He always delivers when you need him. He bounces back from his bad starts. He's had 2 or 3 bad starts this year. He's bounced back from every single one of them. He can do it in so many different ways. It's just, I mean, Eli, anything we haven't said, we've talked about him a lot on this stream. Anything we haven't said.
Well, I encourage people to check out, there's a pretty new article from Devin Fink of Fangraphs about him and just being very definitive about how he's emerging as one of the very best pitchers in baseball. No qualifiers behind it. If you remember at the very start of the year, and especially in spring training, it was the big adjustment was his changeup and making that more of a swing and miss pitch and a pitch that he threw more often. And early on this season, that was getting him more strikeouts. Like, the storyline of the season is a little bit more complicated than we sometimes paint it out to be. Like, there was a dip after those first couple starts. Also when they started checking for the sticky stuff. His pitch mix changed, his spin rate went down, his strikeouts went down, and he made adjustments. So the changeup was like the big developments early in the year. And then later in the year, it's been the slider. He's been throwing the slider a lot more. And the slider has been the one that has now had him missing bats more than ever before. It helped him set a career high in that one game in the Saturday night game. I remember that very vividly. In most of his starts since then, it's been the slider that he's made that adjustment with. He's such a smart pitcher. He's done this working with a bunch of different catchers. Like, we try to apply this narrative about, what catcher makes the most sense to get the most out of these guys. It really doesn't matter with Sandy. I mean, he was pitching well with Chad Wallach the last couple of years. He was pitching fine with Alfaro early in the year and for a lot of this year. And recently he's been pitching fine with Alex Jackson. He's been pitching fine with Sandy Leone. It doesn't matter. Like, you can't ruin him. Like, he's too good, and whatever you put down, he'll figure out a way to execute that pitch and make it make sense, even if it doesn't make sense. He's awesome. He is really awesome, and he just continues to get better. The only way, if he just continues the progression, then, I mean, next year you have to be talking about him as an elite pitcher, as like a Cy Young contender. Absolutely. Which they have not had since Jose. They have not had anybody anywhere close to this level since Jose. And I mean, by any expectations you put on him, he continues to push past it. They'd be very smart to lock him up, and that's obviously going to be a huge storyline the entire winter.
Alex, your minor league Cy Young pitcher, and I think I know where you're going to go, but I'm curious.
Yeah, it's an easy one. It's got to be Max Meyer.
I thought you were going to go Yuri.
Eater was definitely a candidate, and then of course he goes down with the TJ. Yuri, love him, amazing kid. I mean, I think he's going to be a good pitcher, but in terms of long-term ceiling, this is his first season. He's 18 years old. I want to see a little bit more before I say that this guy's like Cy Young material. So for me, Max Meyer, speaks for itself. Makes it all the way up to AAA in his first season. Really, really good. That slider, man, I keep talking about it. You could talk about Eater slider, which is a really good pitch. Talk about McCanley's curveball out of that draft, which is really good. Man, Max Meyer's slider, absolutely filthy. I think it's probably the best slider in the entire organization, probably including major leagues. It's that good, and it's going to be that good. So, yeah, I want to see him as soon as possible, man. I know that the Marlins aren't doing it now because it's a lost season and arbitration eligibility, and you lose a year. I get it. I told you guys I hate that excuse, but I understand it from the business side. But you will see this guy very shortly because he's ready, and he's ready to pitch here now after just one full minor league season, and that's incredible. So, especially after a lost season. So, great guy, man. I think he's going to be really, really solid. And as a starter, I think he has no trouble sticking as a starter despite the size. I think he's going to be great.
All right, the next award we're going to go to is Rookie of the Year. There are 3 candidates. I'm willing to throw Brian De La Cruz in here, but it's Jazz, it's Trevor, and it's Brian De La Cruz. I'm very interested to see how many of you shy away from Trevor. So, Isaac, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I won't shy away from Trevor. It's got to be Trevor Rogers. He pitched so well the whole first half of the season. Jazz also deserves obviously a hell of a shot out there. He's been here all year long. He's gotten some tiny little injuries throughout the season, but he's been great. He cemented himself as a starting second baseman. And Brian De La Cruz, holy shit, man. I saw that coming. But for the Rookie of the Year for the whole season, it's Trevor Rogers without a doubt.
Yeah. Alex Carver, I'm going to go. I'll come to you last. Eli, go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. The way that I would rank them, because if the Rookie of the Year voting on the ballot in the BBWAA, it's 3 spots, and I'm Trevor number 1. I think I'd still give Jazz number 2, even over De La Cruz, just on the volume and especially his hot streaks. When Jazz was at his best in April, he was one of the best, most valuable players in baseball. I mean, we remember the stats. He was leading. I think he produced in a single month. He produced this 1 win above replacement in a single month. That's that's a superstar pace that he was on early in the year. His defense was disappointing. We know that. We know some of his streakiness, all yada, yada, yada. But all in all, it was a really solid rookie year, especially compared to some of these other prospects we've seen the last couple of years who had similar expectations and didn't come anywhere close to what he did. That's really impressive. So we covered most of Trevor already. And to me, he's going to finish number 2 in the real life National League Rookie of the Year voting. It's awesome. It's awesome. And hopefully he has at least 1 or 2 really solid starts to finish out this year to make us super confident moving forward.
If he has 1 or 2 starts, he could make, that are really just fantastic. I think he could make a play to get back into it, honestly. I know India has kind of gone cold a little bit, but
I think his numbers
are so 121.
He's going to get some first place votes. I don't think it'll be unanimous, but in terms of who's ultimately going to finish on top in the voting, I think it's
121 radio runs created plus 832 OPS. Kevin, go ahead and rank the 3 for me. Eli just talked about.
I'm gonna go Rogers. Chisholm's a close second. This guy, Chisholm's been everything for this team this season. His defense is the only thing that looks a little bit iffy, but besides that, when he's hitting when he's hitting the baseball, he's hitting it well. I'm pretty sure on the top 5 I put out, I think it was today. There was a play where he hit an upper decker. I haven't seen that in a while. He's done that quite a bit this season. I think twice, if I'm correct. And then 3rd, I think De La Cruz. But if you want to really throw in an honorable mention, you could really put either Jesus Sanchez or Anthony Bender, who've been pretty solid. But I don't think they're in that running for Rookie of the Year, but you could for sure throw them in there. And I would say honorable mentions for sure. Both of those guys came up from, I think Bender was on the alternate training side, if I'm correct. And then, or he was on the taxi squad. And then Sanchez was in AAA, just destroying AAA baseball. I mean, the guy was batting up to 507 at the start of the season. Hits a 400-something foot homer. He was doing it all, so he really deserved to get up there. He got up, he got his chance, and he made the best of it. And when it comes to Trevor, I mean, it's Trevor, all-star, 2-time Rookie of the Month. I think his time is over. I don't think he's going to get Rookie of the Year. I think it's going to be Jonathan India at the end of the day. But I mean, he put one hell of a start, 8 innings. He's back in the running for sure. But I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, Trevor deserves it. He really surprised many of us this season. And now it's just build off from that and see what happens next season, because this guy for sure could be a number 2 starter. But we'll see what happens.
Alex, for you. Came to you last because we're going to go MLB and MILB. For MILB, it can be 2020 or 2021 draft picks, or international guys as well. So go ahead with your Rookie of the Years.
Victor Mason. No, I'm kidding. I think, minor league MVP on the full season.
Rookie of the Year.
Oh, Rookie of the Year. So first year in the org. That's what you're telling me?
Yes.
Geez, that makes it different. Man,
it's tough, right? There were a lot of good.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think. Jeez. I mean, you could say Meyer again, honestly, just because of how good he was. I mean, and you're talking about the 2020 draft; it was all pitchers. 2021 draft, there's just not enough that I saw. A lot of those guys started low in the system, and most of them were collegiate guys. I didn't really see a ton of Khalil Watson. So if you want to go over a first-year organizational guy from 2020 or 2021, I think it has to be Max Meyer, man. He was that good, and he's going to be that good. And I already talked about him, so I won't bore you there. But, yeah, I think that guy could definitely be with the Marlins in 2022 for sure.
Yeah, with the MLB, I'm going to talk about Jazz for a sec. It's just – if he's only going to end up playing like 120 something games. I think if he plays 140, 150, he's flying past the 2020 mark for sure. And I mean, he can get hot this week and get it. He needs 3 more home runs. So, a 2020 season in your rookie year, 100 weighted runs created plus, but it's been really inconsistent. Next year, you just want to see more of that consistency. And I think he's a guy he's only going to get better, I think, based off of the jump he made from last year to this year. If he makes that kind of jump again, you're talking about an all-star player in 2022. But I think first he's got to get a little more consistent before he makes a jump up to that level. But really impressed with how he stayed under 30% strikeout rate. I thought for sure he was going to be over 30%, 28.6. Obviously, it's still pretty high, or 28.4, sorry. It's still pretty high, but it's good for him considering the biggest problem, issue we all saw with him coming in was his strikeout ability. I'm going to go ahead and say Rogers just because he's going to be second in the Rookie of the Year voting. But I really think De La Cruz deserves a fair shout here with what he did in the second half, just kind of re-energizing the lineup. And I really do think that the second half version of the lineup has, it hasn't had better players, but seeing some of these guys perform the way they have in September and late on in the season has been really exciting. So, but all right, final award, MVP. I think we might have a lot of carryover from Cy Young, but I'm curious to go around the room and see. Isaac, you already said Sandy is your MVP. You're muted.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I don't think any of us should. Sandy Alcantara, most valuable player for the Marlins. Without him, without his 200 innings pitched, without his incredible season, we were losing 100 games. So Sandy Alcantara, most valuable player.
Eli, any disagreement?
No, we agree with Sandy. I probably felt differently as the season was going on. Of course, really early on, Jazz was great, and Trevor was on an amazing pace. When at the time, I mean, he was, and of course, Starling Marte. If he had spent this whole year, you don't know what. I mean, based on the full numbers that he has put up between Oakland and the Marlins, that'd be a really tough call between Starling if it was full season numbers here and Sandy. In reality, it was Sandy for me pretty clearly.
Yeah, Kevin, any disagreement?
No, after thinking about it, I think Sandy deserves the MVP of the season. Alfaro also had a good shot, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to go to Sandy. He had a good season. He's shown it all. I mean, it's the ace. There's not much more to say. Aguilar, I know, got it for the Marlins this season, but
Yeah,
he had a
co-MVP.
good, he deserved it too. But if Adam Duvall had stayed, I think I would have gotten Adam Duvall. He has 38 homers right now. That guy's just mashing it up for the Braves. He's been a huge part of that team.
Alex, I know you're a huge Mickey Rowe guy, but obviously I think we all agree that Sandy was the best player this year. But you're minor league MVP as well.
I mean, if I go with the guy that I want to go with, I'm going to be called a homer. But I'm not going to go with Troy just because of he was statistically, if you go WRC plus, whatever, you can go stats across the board. He was the best player in the Marlins minor league system, 100%. But if you want to talk about who I would give it to, two things for me would take it away from Troy, and that was his BABIP, which was 361, which is kind of high, especially considering he played in Jupiter a little bit. And then, his age where he was playing, as I said. I thought he could have made it up to AA. I thought he should have made it up to AA with Wahoo's not having much at first base, but that didn't happen. It'll happen next year. So I'll go with Peyton Burdick. Peyton Burdick is another guy like Meisner who struggled at the start. He was walking all season long. His walk rate's like 13% or something like that. And then he just turned it on and absolutely had a fantastic full season at the AA level. So, yeah, man, as I said to you, I think Burdick should be given, if the Marlins don't sign a corner outfielder, I think Burdick should be given a realistic opportunity to potentially win that starting job, left field starting job in spring training. I think he will be given that shot next to DLC. So, yeah, I would go with Peyton Burdick, but Troy is very close as a second.
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to draw up a different answer just to be unique and different, but there is no other answer this year. At the end of the day, when you look at the season, when you look at the 2021 season, it's all going to come back to Sandy Alcantara. He was the story of the year for the Marlins. You can talk about, there were obviously starting Marte trade was a huge deal and it got a lot of attention, and Jazz and the young guys coming up and playing pretty well, which how nice is it to just get somebody playing well, a young guy playing well, like Brian De La Cruz, an MLB ready hitter, comes over, hits like crazy. It was so nice. But all of that pales in comparison to what Sandy Alcantara did this year. I mean, legitimately could have been a Cy Young candidate on a better team or with more attention or without 2 or 3 bad starts. He was that good. And I think going forward, you have to, entering next year, put him in as a Cy Young candidate when you go into next season in the National League. He's getting up towards that level with the Scherzers, with the DeGroms, with the Nolas. I think he might be on that, second or third tier. And if he takes another step like he did this year, he'll be in that top tier in those elite starters, and he could absolutely win a Cy Young. He's been that good. He has been by far the best player on the team. He's been the most consistent player on the team from start to finish. It's been every 5 days he has gone out there and performed maximum over 200 innings. The horse gave everything they needed. They didn't give him enough at times, but it's like DeGrom when he won the Cy Young and he was like 8-9 win-loss. I think Sandy's going to finish under 500 on his win-loss record, which is why pitcher wins is such a dumb stat. But it's the story of the season. If you want something positive to take from the season, and there are down the line, there are some really positive things. There is nothing else to take away from the season more positive than what Sandy Alcantara did this season.
Unless Sandy wins his final start, he's going to finish below 400 in his winning percentage this year.
Wow. And his final start, I think he's got one more, right, in the Philly series. He won't pitch in this series. There is a series that we completely ignored, kind of. It's against the Mets. It's a 4-game set. Obviously, the doubleheader tomorrow, Rogers and Stroman. Not sure who's going to pitch in the second game against Trevor Williams, acquired from the Cubs in the Javi Baez deal. Obviously, the Mets are going to miss the playoffs. Eliezer Hernandez against Taijuan Walker on Wednesday. Eddie Cabrera one last time against McGill on Thursday. And then the Marlins come home to face the Phillies. We'll be here on Friday previewing the offseason and then talking about the final series, maybe making fun of ourselves a little bit for all our shitty predictions over the season here on Fish Stripes Live. It's been a joy. So the last Fish Stripes Live is on Friday. Kevin's last Fish Stripes Live is today. He will not be able to join us on Friday. You made prediction time a thing. So it's only right that in your final show, you lead us off. What's going to happen in this series, Kevin?
Yeah, first I want to thank Eli, for giving me the shot, to be on Fish Stripes. I thank him a lot. And, from the first time watching the streams with only Ethan and Eli, now growing it to Isaac, Alex, Noah, he's not here today, but Daniel Rodriguez, it's grown, and we got Craig Mish on it. Craig fucking Mish. We got Daniel Alvarez. We got, so many guys, and we can't wait for the next one. So
I'm sorry, Kevin. Continue.
yeah. But, prediction, Marlins are going to split the Mets 2-2.
All right.
I think it's
That's
fair. There's no way the Marlins are going to sweep. I thought if it was a 3-game set, I would have said sweep, but no, they're going to split it.
All right, Kevin, it really has been a treat, man. And you're not retiring, like Isaac said.
No,
you're
I'm not.
not retiring. You're still going to be at Fish Stripes,
Yeah.
but this is your final stream of the year. I'm sure we'll do some more off-season stuff. But it's just been a treat. Been such a great addition.
Make sure to watch
it
the
really
social
is crazy.
videos.
Friday. I think we'll talk about it on Friday a little bit, but it really is crazy how these things have what these things have grown into, and the fact that we've been able to carry our 15 long shows into September is crazy, and that's a credit to you guys. Eli, your prediction for this series?
I'll go pessimistic. I've been overly optimistic for a bunch of these September series.
Me too.
So I will just say 1 of 4 that they win in this series. And just to acknowledge something that Kevin referred to, I mean, every single stream I figure out something new. It only took 6 months for me to figure out how to actually put my GIFs into the stream. This is the very first show that I actually put GIFs into the center, the ones that I spend so much time making for Twitter and for the website. And a new thing that we figured out here on this stream right at the very, very end of the year. So very interesting plans that I'll have to come up with to keep this going, so that every single time we fire this up, I figured out something new. And we appreciate everybody that tunes in. Despite this team, they're going to lose 95 games. They're in bad shape. But thanks to everybody who tunes in.
Yeah. Alex Carver, I'm going to come to you for your prediction for this series.
Yeah, well, first of all, these have been really cool. I mean, I found this cool outlet to do these on, and he does great work putting these together. So that's a credit to him and everything that he does for you guys. It's a pleasure to join you guys. It's always cool when I can have my voice heard on a Fish Stripes platform. That's always fun. So thanks for having me. I know we'll be here one more time, but thanks for having me. It's been great. Prediction for the series. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, this is it's just like more bad baseball. I know I say that every single stream, just bad baseball on bad baseball. But here we go again. 3-game series, right? I think, yeah. So
4
games.
4 with the doubleheader game, yeah. So they go into it. I'll say they win 1 game, and that's my prediction. Just because you got Trevor, and then who knows what's going to happen with Eddie, and who knows what's going to happen with Eliezer, and who knows who pitches the other game. So 1 of 4. As I've said multiple times, just get the season over with.
It's almost there. It's almost there. It's almost over. Isaac, your prediction?
Well, I mean, if the Mets were still in it, I would say, hey, Marlins are going to win 3 out of 4, but they're not doing shit. We're not doing shit. And this isn't, we have another stream on Friday, so I'll save my kind words for that one regarding all you guys. I fucking hate you all. But let's say they split it. They'll win one of the doubleheader games, and I think Edward comes back, and this is his 2nd game in City. I think Edward comes back after a rough start in Tampa. He'll come back and pitch well on Thursday, I believe it is, and the Marlins will split, hopefully.
All right, I'm going to go ahead. I'll save my kind words for the final stream as well. I'll kind of sum this all up. Maybe I'll write something out or something. But all right, what if I said all year in 4 games? Split?
No one to win 3 out of 4. Sweet.
The Marlins are going to lose 3 out of 4 games to the Mets this series.
Whoa.
I thought I was optimistic, thinking they could win a couple games against the Rays. I've been a little more optimistic than I'd like. And Kevin and I, every time I predict that the Marlins are going to do well, they play like shit. So let's try the other way around. Let's say they're going to play like shit. Maybe they'll do well. Not a split. I'm going to say the Marlins win 1 of 4 games here. It's been a treat, this little 2022 wrap-up, or 2021 wrap-up. Again, on Friday, we're going to have a 2022 preview. kind of like what we did with Craig Mish, but we're going to be, doing our own thing. Won't be as much insider information. We're just going to kind of take our guesses for what's going to happen in 2022. Maybe a little earlier start time for that. We'll see. But and that'll be before the Philly series, the final 3 games of the season for the Marlins. The season is almost there. It's been a treat for Isaac, for Alex, for Kevin, for Eli. We will see you guys one last time on Friday. Enjoy the series and go Fish.